Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to our next CTA mock review board scenario. This evening, Waruna is the lucky candidate who's been chosen to present. Thank you very much for joining us, and I will hand you straight over to Waruna. Thank you very much.
Hi, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to present the solution for Global Adventure Tours. So Global Adventure Tours is a fledgling company that specializes in booking and organizing adventure-based tours. And they operate in many countries. And based on the scenario given, we propose that it's a multi-language implementation. And in the document, they say, though they operate in different countries, there's a goal to standardize the processes between different countries. And I propose to go with a single org. And as I mentioned, they operate in few countries, in different languages. And for that, I propose to implement a multi-language implementation. Yeah. So if you look at the actors, there are a few internal as well as external players. So for the internal actors, which are tour operator coordinators, adventure specialists, service coordinators, and regional managers, they'll be using the Sales Cloud, the platform licenses. And for external actors, which are adventurers, who are the folks who are participating in the events, they'll be using Custom Community. And the tour operators, they'll be using Custom Community Plus, mainly because they'll be using reporting, and also there's a role hierarchy involved. Same goes with the tour guides. And for the office managers of the tour guides, which is doing just reporting, they'll be using community, Custom Community. And on system landscape, so on the right-hand side, I've mentioned the systems that they are using right now. So they have a tour management system, a Service Pro application, which they use for scheduling, keeping schedules, and a payment force, which is an internal payment gateway that they're using. And also the tour operators, they have different independent systems as well. And also some countries are using Salesforce as their system. So as part of this project implementation, we have to do a data migration. For that, I'm proposing to use a ETL tool. And also for the integration, we'll be using a ESB product since we have many systems to integrate, and ESB would be used for these real-time transactions. So on the left-hand side, we see that I'm proposing a Salesforce system along with a community. And also we'll be enabling social login, which is Facebook, Twitter, and Google+. And for the requirements, there's a need to use Salesforce mobile as well. And also for the some of the documentations where we need signatures, we'll be using DocuSign. And also there's a need to use LDAP along with Active Directory for single sign-on for some of the users. And for the integration, as I proposed before, for the real-time integration, we'll be using a ESB service, where the two systems that we need to integrate is Payment Force for the payment processing. And the requirements is not very clear, but it'll be a real-time either using JSON or XML with a request reply method. And also there's a need to integrate with the tour operator systems. And they have different systems, and since for that reason we'll be using to integrate via ESB, and same it'll be either JSON or XML using a request reply. And there's a need to migrate some of the data, especially with the current system, which is tour management systems, to Salesforce. And also some countries are using Salesforce as their system. And since we are going to go with a single org, we had to migrate the data with these systems using ETL tool via batch. And for the data model, we'll be using leads and opportunities to take propose to operators, as well as adventure proposals. So we'll be using leads and opportunities for the conversion, and also once they are converted, we'll be using accounts and contacts, and the adventurers would be stored as contacts, and now there'll be an account as well. And also, once we confirm a tour, there'll be moved to a table entity called tour, which will have tour schedules. And also, and then when a adventurer contact registration, they'll be stored in an entity called adventure registration entity. And also there'll be some kind of information on payment. We are not storing any payment data within the Salesforce cloud, but there'll be a reference for the payment done, which is maintained in a different system. And as far as the numbers are concerned, I did not see any need to have a large volume as of right now for LDV implementation, because the numbers are around 300,000 and then multiples of few records. So it's no need to do LDV as of right now, given the numbers. And in the role hierarchy, so there's a regional manager which works with different regions, and underneath them we have the AS adventure specialist, and also TOC tour operator coordinators. And the tour operator coordinators have tour guides as well as tour operator managers, which are reporting to them. And then we have service coordinators who are not region specific. They work with multiple regions or areas, and they have their own manager, which is the service coordinator manager as well. And for development, proposing to have development with the Dev Pro, and also continuous integration to support this implementation, given that we have to integrate with many systems as well as multiple countries. And also there'll be a SIT, UAT testing test cycles, which will use a partial Salesforce environment. And also for pre-prod, we'll be using a full copy sandbox where we need to do performance testing as well as testing of data loads. And for this one, each developer would have their own development environment, and they'll be merged into one environment before those are pushed to QA and SIT environment, and then they'll be branched to UAT. And in terms of governance, I propose to make this project successful to have a steering committee, which includes the product owners from all regions, given that there's a implementation touches many regions. And also, especially given that we have to test with the payment system, there has to be some kind of automated testing, so we don't to make sure that our each release or each release is tested properly. And to make the project successful, we need to have status meetings to make sure all the parties are given on track, and with proper sign off at each phase to make on the requirements. And with agile methodology, also we had to propose to use source control to make sure the code is versioned, and also to use CI using current integration. And part of the deployment, there's a need to make sure that the current system is also is maintained during the data load. So we have to do the initial data load, and then also we have to have a delta load to catch up with the remaining of the data, to make sure the cutover happens properly. So for that, we have to make sure the existing systems can support the data changes on date and time, so we can capture the delta changes. Going back. Okay. All right. So going through the requirements, we to make sure that so there is the requirement to that they have a way to capture the current request to a PDF through with information. So for this requirement, we are gonna use the web portal, which is a custom community to capture leads, and those leads would be assigned based on different criteria, based on region, using a process builder. And there's a need to capture documentation. So for this one, we'll be using files, Salesforce files. And also there's a requirement to capture, there's in the current system, they have a spreadsheet with a lot of logic to calculate the registration score. So since we're not seeing the exact requirements around this calculation, either could be we're using custom code to do the calculations, or we can use CPQ to do this calculations on this scope. Based on the logic, we determine what method we're going to use. And there's a requirement to based on the score to have to handle this leads in different way. So we'll be using a process builder to go through the logic and notify the required parties based on this logic given. And to get the approval, we'll be using approval notifications to get the approval from the required party of the proposed lead. And there's on the accessibility, there's a requirement. We'll go one by one. TUCs can only view and edit registration requests on two operators that have been created in the region. So for this one, since there are different regions, we can identify the owner by country. So we'll be using owner-based sharing to make sure the given visibility is given to the right person. And the tour operators are only able to manage draft tours and schedules. So we'll be using record types to make it either draft or published. And based on the record type, we'll be using sharing set to make them exposed on the community. So the next one is draft tours and schedules are only visible to AS by region, and published tours and their schedules are visible to all users. So we'll be using a record type, and based on that, we'll be sharing these records based on criteria. And there's another requirement to make sure only the TOCs can view and edit number of facilities and injuries for the tour operator. So those fields would be exposed using field level security. Yeah, so with this requirement, ACE can view all tour operator registrations requests in their region that require follow-up, except those that are noted at high risk. So for this one, we'll be using a rule-based sharing to manage the sharing. And adventurers can only view their own contact information, tour bookings, and assistant requests that they have made themselves. So for this one, we'll be using owner-based sharing, and the this adventurers entity would be private. Tour guides can only view details to operators 6 months prior to the scheduled tours, and for this one, we'll be using a role-based sharing. SCs and their managers should only be able to view the adventurer assistance requests assigned to that SC. So for this one, we'll be using a role hierarchy to give the visibility for the managers. If you go through the requirements, let's skim through and make sure I've captured everything. Yeah, so for the data migration, as I mentioned, GAT is a 24/7 operation, and it requires minimal downtime during cutover. So for this reason, and there's a need to extract and cleanse the data. So before the data is loaded to Salesforce in the as part of IDL using ETL, we have to make sure the data is cleansed outside of Salesforce and taken to the platform. And the requirements say it takes a week. So for this reason, what we can do is we are going to do the initial data load, and the data which is not captured as part of the initial load would be brought to the system using a delta load with a logic after the first cutover. And for reporting, there's a requirement to show some data of the last 2 years and some summary data of the last 7 years. And given that requirement, given that we don't have much data, I would propose to create dashboards and reports within the Salesforce Cloud platform itself. And some of the data, given that there are multiple regions which use different languages, we'll be using a translation workbench to make sure some of the reports are generated in their own language for this country specific languages. Yeah. Thank you very much for listening in. Now I can take questions. Hello.
Hey, Waruna.
Hello there. Sorry, I was struggling to come off mute. Thank you, Waruna. That was about 20 minutes. So you've got about an hour's work. Well,
wow.
Let's just say, so 20 minutes, so 40 minutes. That would have brought you to, okay, so you've got about an hour's worth of questioning. Okay. I'm sure between us we can fill that up. Tushar, do you have any questions, first of all?
Yeah, that's sure. I don't know. Can you go to your licensing diagram or the slide?
Sure, hold on. Let me share my screen. Yeah. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, I can. Yeah. So so in the data model, so you're proposing to have customer community plus for tour operator and tour guide, right? Pretty much tour operator. Is that right?
Yes. Tour operator and tour guide. Yes.
And in the data model, you're proposing to use a lead send opportunity.
Yes. So yeah. So leads and opportunities would be coming to the internal to the system, internal to the internal users, and then they'll be once they come in, they'll be managed by the internal users.
Right. Do you think the experts, they need access to opportunities so they know what's going on with their request? That is how you manage your registration, right?
So leads and opportunity would the intake would be done by using the community cloud, and then once it would come in, it would be managed by the internal users.
Okay, so do you think the external users, they need to see those opportunities, or you don't think they need to know what's happening with their registration?
Put the requirements real quick. Yeah, I think it's prudent to for them to allow them to check the status of their submission from the committee.
Okay, so if their submission for the community, this is this tour operators or is this your actual adventurers?
Hold on a second. So the request would come from the two operators to make a new request to be a tour operator and also to onboard a new adventure tour.
Okay, so is the request at that point a lead?
Yes. So when a tour operator make a new request to be a tour operator or to propose a new adventure tour, it will be a lead that will come in as a lead.
Okay, and then at the point then that they're going to take it to the next stage, they would convert that lead into an opportunity, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so how would your tour operators be able to manage their opportunity with a customer community plus license?
Yeah, so I would say in that case we'll go with a partner portal license, so they can manage leads and so you can give access to the leads and opportunities with the partner portal.
Okay. Tasar, any more questions on this particular point?
Not here. Yeah, just going through the other requirements.
Yeah.
And there is a regarding the single sign-on requirement, right? So there is a requirement for LDAP for internal users, and so how do you achieve that? I mean, can you provide some details of implementation, or how do you integrate LDAP with Salesforce?
Yeah, I would propose to use Active Directory to integrate with LDAP. Then so it doesn't.
Okay, and how would you requirement for provisioning and deprovisioning of users?
One second. Yeah, we'll be so we'll use provisioning either like just-in-time JIT provisioning and deprovisioning. So we have to use JIT system. So let me.
Okay.
And for LDAP, can you provide some details? How exactly are you going to integrate? I mean, what are the steps in Salesforce? What are the things you need to do to integrate LDAP with Salesforce?
So we had enabled a single sign-on for the users, and either we had to use a user ID as an email address or a federation ID, and to make sure when they log in, we do the authentication against the which will house all the users and the passwords in there, and we to make a call. This authentication, and based on the successful authentication, we'll enable them to log into Salesforce.
Okay. And what about the social login? How that is going to work? The Facebook, Twitter, or Google Plus?
Yeah, so we had to use a registration handler. So once they log in, based on the method they use, we had to use a registration handler, which will have the logic to do the authentication. And if it's a new user, we'll be creating a new user within the platform. and provide them access. So we have to. So there are some registration handles which are given by Salesforce. So we do modify some of them to. It's gonna work with the latest release of Facebook, Twitter, and Google. So as I said, we use the registration handler to enable login and authentication.
Okay, so do you have to do something in Facebook or Google Plus? Do you need to register something, or what are
yes.
things?
Yeah, we need to have a registration handler with these three systems given.
Okay.
Okay, I have a question. If you look at page 4 of the scenario, it's right at the very top of the page. There's a requirement to be able to, for tour operators to be able to mark a tour to auto-renew each year, in which case a new set of tour dates will automatically be created, which should debit the creditor's account and payment force and update the tour operator's systems. Would you be able to talk us through how you would build that in Salesforce, please?
Gemma, I talk about page number 4.
You don't have page 4.
Gemma, can you just mention the page number 4, please? Page number, if you don't mind.
Yes, page 4.
Okay, which point?
It's the very first complete paragraph, complete bullet point at the top of the page.
Adventure request.
No, it's the one just above that.
The tour operator can mark the tour to auto renew each year. That paragraph.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So the tour operator can make this request, where to enable this request to come through the portal, and then based on that, we have to have a process builder to create these tour dates in the background. And yeah, so first we have to make sure that we don't place record if the payment is not done successfully. So as I mentioned before, we're not going to create a payment details. We're not going to maintain within the platform. So in that case, we have to make a call to the payment force to see if that payment is successful or not. And based on that condition, we can create the tour dates as part of the process builder. So within that, we'll make a call to the payment force to see the status, and based on that, we can have a logic to continue to create the calls.
Okay, so if you're using Process Builder to create the tour and the new tour and the tour dates, sorry, a new set of tour dates that will automatically be created, how will you orchestrate the creation of those records with the call that you're making out to payment force?
Yeah, I think we'll be using a flow with a time-based window. So within that, we'll have a step where we'll give a time to get the request back. And so we'll use a flow method rather than process builder for this particular requirement.
Okay, what are the implications of that flow perhaps running for millions of records in one go? Or thousands of records in one go?
I mean, given the requirements, there aren't many records. I think we have for each tour. Yeah. So yeah. So each tour operator manage around 20 different tours that can be scheduled 10 times a year. So I don't see a problem with these numbers to achieve the requirement.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Can I ask, What was your justification for selecting to use opportunities for your bookings? Sorry, for your proposed tour requests.
Yeah, it's mainly to one is you get the lead, right, and then once you have the approval, so I was going to mark it as a tour, but the lead would be just there could be many requests that would come in, but you would convert that lead only when it's confirmed to be a confirmed a tour or a operator. So and then since I have many other entities which is tour specific, and on the opportunities we're going to maintain both the tour operators and advanced tour data. I thought of moving the data to a tour as when you have to confirm tour, which has many tour specific information. But there's a way to, I mean, you could use opportunity / tour in the same entity as well.
Okay.
If you go to page 4 again on the adventure request.
On the requirement, Trisha?
Yeah, the requirement on the page 4 under adventure request, the first requirement. There under the first paragraph, there are the last two bullets. The search should display user-friendly global map, and the next one it's asking the system to give some suggestions. How do you achieve those two requirements?
No, you said you're on page 4, right?
Sorry?
Did you mention this page 4?
Yeah, page 4 under the adventure request requirement.
The search should display user-friendly global map of tours that are coming up.
Yeah, that and the next one.
Yeah, so for the first one, we have to using the address to have a special I have to check whether there might be a plugin that we can use to display on the community a map with the specific locations, so you can mark the locations either to use the address or the geolocation, and based on that we can display these locations on a map. The next one. In addition, adventurer can request that the system suggest tours to them based on the types and number of tours that they have booked in the past 5 years. Yeah, so we can have a on the UI we can have a some like a section where we can based on the history, as we mentioned, you're going to maintain all the data within the platform, so we can look at the last 5 years of data, and also the for the particular applicant, what are the registrations they have done, and based on that we have to have some logic to either filter out what kind of tours they participated based on the different types of tours, as well as the area where they are in for a particular radius. We have to filter the records and display them on the web application.
So how specifically would you achieve that? Are you going to be storing those records somewhere? Are you going to be doing that filtering real time with custom logic, or is there a tool you can use?
Well, I would if there are different scenarios, I would propose to use Salesforce Analytics, so we can do the the says and different reporting based on their history. So for that, I think we can use Salesforce Analytics to have this this kind of report generated.
So you would have it be a report that they look at?
Not report itself. It can be like a dashboard within the when they log in. So on the dashboard itself, you can use analytics dashboard to display the data.
Okay, so that deals with being able to view the history. How will you have the system suggest tours to them?
John, can you repeat the question?
So the analytics would give you the backwards view on what they've booked on their booking history. But how would you have the system suggest potential future tours to them?
I'm sorry, Gemma, you were breaking up. Can you repeat the question? Sorry about that.
Of course. How would you have the system suggest future tours to them?
So I think we have to give some conditions on how to propose them. Either their current location and where the tour locations are. So one is so we have to give the different criteria. It could be a location. It could be the types of adventures they participate in the history, as well as what's coming up. So the criteria has to be marked either the distance or the different skills. So that has to be identified, and based on those criteria, we can make sure that the right tours are proposed to them.
Based on history and analytics.
Yes. Yeah. So when you're capturing the history, we have to make sure those data points are captured. So we can, when you're proposing, we can look at those rights data points to propose them.
Okay. Can you talk us through? There's the final requirement on page 4, which talks about Global Adventure Tours calculates the number of assistance requests that are the fault of the tour operator. If you have more than 10 occurring in a given year, the risk level of the operator is upgraded. Can you talk us through the solution you would build to meet that requirement?
We need to calculate the number of assistance requests that are the fault of the tour operator. If more than 10 occurs in a given year. So we can run this I would say this check every night or once a day, and then make sure that we calculate this requirement in terms of how many so we don't have to calculate for the date period from today for the last 1 year. We have to run this report and then do this calculation, and then based on that, we have to change the status of this to here to downgrade the level if this happen less than 3 years. So we have to we can do a schedule. We can run a scheduled process every night to analyze the data, and if the condition is met, we can and most likely we have to do like a notification as well to make sure they are informed they are being downgraded.
Okay, and what's the reason that you would run this every night?
We can run a scheduled, a time-based a process so we can do it in like a nightly process when the for a given time, specific time every day, we can run this job.
Okay. Any particular reason why you would run that every day? You have a look at the requirement in more detail.
Sure. Yeah, so whenever the data comes in, because here it says if more than 10 occur in a given year, the risk level of the operator is upgraded. This is downgraded in the next year if it less than 3 assistant requests occur. So it does specifically say that the moment right away, every minute you have to do that. So just to make sure the system is performing well and making sure we don't need to check this all the time, I would propose that we do it in a given window once a day. Once a day.
Okay.
Can you go to your data model one more time, please?
Sure.
Yeah, so if you go to page 5 again, sorry, the page 4, right? If you're there, under adventurer support, so there is a requirement where the adventurers, if they get into trouble, they will require assistance, right? And will need to request this via their mobile device. So which object or which entity would support that in the data model?
Yeah. So when a assistant request comes through, we have to capture them in a different entity. So which are not captured here. So I need to have an entity capture these requests coming through, and which will have visibility to the which record on them would be the adventure support. And I've not captured that entity here, but we need to make an entry here.
Okay, so there are quite a few requirements below that. So at this point, do you think of any object, any custom object or any out-of-the-box object to manage that based on all the requirements you see below that statement?
Yeah, so I have this custom objects for the to occurrence and the to registration. So along with that, once the tour is on going on, then this request I have to capture them in a custom entity.
Okay. And can you go to your the sharing document which you created? Accessibility requirements, sorry. The first one where we say that the TOC is tour operator coordinators, right? So this is more of a registration request. In your case, it's the lead. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. So and this is so the leads are coming from the external users. They are creating the leads. So can you elaborate on that? How do you plan to do that through honor-based sharing?
Yeah. So the lead would come in from the community application, and then there we would capture the where they're based in, like a country or the region. Based on that region, we would be creating we have to make sure the lead is assigned to the right person based on the based on the geography or the region. So for that, we have to have a rule on the lead sharing to see where the region's from, and then based on that, we have to assign to the based on their assigned region.
So, Waruna, at the point when the registration request is coming in, do they have an account?
For the very first time?
Yes. At that point, they exist in the system as a lead or as an account?
Hold on one second, let me go to that requirement. Yeah, it would come as a the new in go through a review to make sure it fulfills the requirements, and if it's meets the requirements, then another an option. The initial request comes through as a lead, catch the interest.
So, do they have access to the community at this stage while they exist in the system as a lead?
No, to get the first request, they can supply we can have some kind of form, and based on the initial entry, they could enter it without logging, without making registration.
Okay. What platform feature do you use to enable that?
I'm not very sure, Gemma. Sorry.
That's okay. No problem. Okay, I have a question. If you go back to your integrations, let's have a look at your list of integrations. Okay, so can you talk us through your rationale for using ETL to integrate with Service Pro? What kind of system is Service Pro?
Yeah, so it's so they manage the availability and the dispatch of their service coordinators. So cloud-based application which supports HTTP-based services. Somewhere it says, let me look at the data migration requirements.
Okay, and there's a requirement about help requests being sent to the field dispatch system. I can't quite remember which page it is. Let me have a look. Adventurer support, page 4. I think. Yeah. So under adventurer support.
Gemma, which point?
Pardon?
Okay.
Yeah, page 4.
Mm-hmm.
And under the section called adventurer support, it says, at times adventurers will get into trouble and require assistance and will need to request this via their mobile device. And then further along, the last point but one, it says updates to the request need to be integrated to the field dispatch system in real time. Can you tell us how you would make sure that the field dispatch system is updated in real time every time there's an update to a help request?
Okay. Yeah, so Gemma, initially my plan was to use the scheduling system and migrate that data to Salesforce Cloud. But when I'm going to this requirement, what it says is like we can maintain the system for scheduling and of scheduling going forward. So what we'll do is keep that as a system of records for the schedules, and then have a real-time integration from Salesforce using ESB. So whenever a request comes through our mobile app, we can use our cloud, Salesforce Cloud, and using ESB, we'll be doing a outbound message to update the system in real time. So that's the proposed architecture. I didn't capture it initially, but we'll be using outbound message to update the service pro with this data coming through the mobile app.
Okay, thank you. You have also, let me just check. Tell us about your second integration on this list, Salesforce to the Tour operating system. Can you tell us what data is being passed there, please?
Yeah. One second. Yeah, so sometimes they have the different tour operators. They have their own system to manage their bookings. So for example, they must be working with this company and plus other companies. So in order for them to manage their bookings, to keep their systems up to date, we might need to send the data from Salesforce to the systems. So if they make a request to send, so for this request, I had the integration method to update the data based on what's updated in Salesforce.
And what data would you be sending from Salesforce to their system?
The bookings, what the tour data, the schedules, what are the dates that we have, the durations, those kind of information. So when we finalize the schedule, different locations and the dates, those we can send them to the operators, so their system can be in sync.
Okay.
And Waruna, if you go to page 5 around accessibility requirements, the one just before the last one, the tour guides can only view the details of tour operators 6 months prior to the scheduled tours. How do you achieve that?
Tour guides can view details of tour operators 6 months. Tour guides can view. So when the tour guides log into the portal, we'll make sure that the view that's given to them. So they'll have a different login. Right? So based on that login, when we look at this particular records, we'll have a filter to display only the last 6 months data, not beyond that. So we'll need to add a filter criteria on that dashboard or to make sure the records filtered.
So you would go to, so if you go to your data model for a minute again.
Okay, I have another question. So service coordinators and their managers should only be able to view adventurer assistant requests that are assigned to that service coordinator. How
Can you repeat that?
How will that be achieved, and who will the owner of the case be?
Gemma, which point you're talking about? Which page number, point number?
Page 5. It's the last bullet before the reporting requirements. So I suppose that's two questions. First of all, who will own the case? And second, how will you meet the requirements that the service coordinators and their managers should only be able to view the adventure assistant request assigned to that?
Yeah. So I think what I said was initially for this adventurer assistance request, we're going to have a new entity. So in that, the adventurer assistant, and then so for the manager we can give access through the role hierarchy, but how to make sure that only the assigned adventure assistance is given, so it will owner based sharing. So yeah, so it will be one sharing, and then through the role hierarchy we'll make sure that only the managers above them are given access.
Okay, so how will your actual adventurers then be able to update that request for help?
Yeah, so an adventurer would be because they'll be making a request, and so they'll definitely have access because they are a requester, and then so we need to have a creation based on the to make sure the assigned adventurer assistant as well as the manager is given access. So it has to be criteria-based sharing.
Okay, thank you. I have some questions around your development lifecycle, governance, and risk management. So you mentioned that you had selected the agile methodology. Could you talk us through your justification for that decision?
Yeah, mainly because there are multiple regions and multiple product owners that wish the news that they'll be using this new platform. So I proposed agile mainly because we could show the progress of the changes, because we had to get the reviews, the system being reviewed and sign off. So rather than working like months and months to show the progress, I would propose having like sprint cycles and to show the progress as we go along with the development life cycle.
Okay, could you look at page 6, second bullet point, please? How often are the releases?
Yeah. Due to the ripple impact of changes, GET mandates the major changes to its application are restricted to only once a quarter, right? Yeah. So the release to the production or the deployment can happen with the given release cadence. But you can still though the deployment happens based on release cadence, it doesn't restrict us on showing the progress with the product owners more frequently, and using a agile or a hybrid agile methodology, so we can get the buy-in from all the regions.
Okay, so bearing in mind that agile is designed to build, test, deploy very quickly so that you have something shippable. very regular intervals. Do you still feel that that is the appropriate methodology to use?
So we want not to release this the product to production as frequently, but we can go through the other cycles of getting reviewed by QA and the product owners and different divisions. So there's a internal and external divisions, and plus there are a lot of stakeholders. So we still use a hybrid methodology with using agile plus and to meet this release cadence. But I would still propose to go with a much more frequent reviews with the request stakeholders.
Can you not do frequent reviews using waterfall when you're going to QA and UAT?
Yes, I mean using waterfall. Of course, you can have if you have the right cadence, you can still get reviewed. But what I meant here was you have teams, you have sprint teams with different regions, different tests. There are multiple regions, right? And each region might have their own testing resources and UAT folks. So rather than till very end, better to get reviewed and know the changes, there are changes much in advance rather than waiting until the last minute. And you can also get the buy-in from the stakeholders earlier that cycle.
Okay. And what role would continuous integration play within that release strategy?
So, I mean, here, as you said on the second point, they mandate that changes are done once a quarter. But I think with the capabilities of the Salesforce Cloud and with this ability to support CI, I would propose the steering committee to look at the decision one more time and see how we can integrate CI so we can give additional features more frequently than every quarter.
Okay, so obviously going back to their policy, major changes are restricted to only once a quarter. So if we're only dropping once a quarter, are you making the assumption that you can influence that?
Yes, I would say we can revisit the decision of this platform.
Okay. Any specific risks that you have been able to see with the current political outlook and the situation with regards to development? Can you highlight some of those risks?
Yeah, so risks are like it's multiple regions, and also we have made an assumption that all the countries would follow the same process going forward. So it's a big assumption, and based on that, we have proposed a single org hierarchy method. But there could be, once we go into details, there could be some countries might resist adhering to one process. So there's a big risk in that. So and also each. Sorry, Gemma?
How would you get around that risk of having multiple countries involved and then not all necessarily accepting one single process?
Yeah, so I think as part of this project, we to make sure that the process is documented well in advance, and then we have to make sure that we get the sign off from all the product owners and the right stakeholders from each country that they agree with this, the proposed flow. So getting sign off from the right stakeholders is very important.
Okay, thank you. And talk us through your testing strategy and how that testing strategy would resolve any risks, any of those risks.
Yeah, so I would say for testing some of the areas, especially the payment system integration, we have to enable some automated testing. So whenever we do a release, so we can, some of the repeated tasks, we test using an automation tool. And it's important that we test the visibility between different regions, and also translations to different languages as part of this, and then proposing a full copy sandbox to make sure that we test the application in terms of performance as well as the data load, to make sure that system can withstand when you go live in production.
Just thinking. So due to hiring restrictions in the past, they're relying heavily on individual contractors and system integrators, and they've not been able to control a consistent churn of resources. So obviously it's become quite a high risk environment. So what suggestions would you make to help global event stores become more self-sufficient?
Well, since there's a lot of changes going on, I would propose that the changes and the code which are done on the platform. So before it's done, we have to put some guidelines on standards, and then I would propose to have a peer review system where we the code and the changes are reviewed by peers to make sure those standards are met. And also, yeah, we say there's a so given that a lot of contractors are working, I would propose, along with the standards, to set up a COE where we can enforce this standards in the platform.
Just for our listeners, what's a COE?
Set of excellence.
Thank you. Okay. What would be the impact of this release cycle on the technical work streams, in your opinion? Taking into account you have Payment Force, which has a rigorous testing cycle which can take multiple weeks. So what do you think are the technical impacts on that, on the rest of the team?
Yeah, so as I said, since especially for this payment gate testing, we have to use automated testing because each and every release to make sure that integration to payment, which is a critical system, is going to work. So, and also we have to make sure there's a corresponding test environments with with we can use test data, so this integration can be tested.
Thank you.
And also, yeah, and also since the payments are very critical, I want to make sure that we log all the requests coming through, and if there are any issues, we can go and check the logging data to make, and so we can troubleshoot it properly.
Can you suggest any favorite tools that you might use for that?
Well, you can in the platform itself, you can you can have a kind of a framework where you log the request and reply XML itself, and then you can later on you can archive or remove it. But I would propose to keep the whatever is coming and going out. I would propose to have a framework in place to log the request and reply.
Okay. Okay, we've got about 5 more minutes of questioning. Would anybody else like to ask a question?
So on page 3 towards the bottom, the second to last bullet and the last sub bullet there's a requirement to generate a pre-formatted PDF to display tour and schedule information. Can you explain how you would solve that?
Is it under the tour proposal or scheduling, or the first one, tour operator management?
Under proposal and scheduling, the first bullet point under that, and then the last sub bullet.
Create a pre-formatted PDF and place the tour and schedule information. So,
hello, we're here.
So we can give a report where they could as a PDF, but here it says create a pre-formatted PDF. Yeah, I'm not very sure how to achieve this requirement.
Okay. And then on page 4, under the second bullet point under adventure support, there's a requirement for customers to be able to ask for assistance using their mobile device. Can you explain how you would solve that too?
Heather, under adventure request, which point?
The second bullet point.
The adventure then make a booking for the tour date?
It says, at times adventurers will get into trouble and require assistance and will need to request this via their mobile device.
Yeah, so for the assistance, we said we're going to make a request. We're going to make a so they'll have a mobile application with this feature that they can download, and then so when if they sign up for the tour, it'll be they can access that tour, and they can we'll have a feature using Salesforce One to make the request from the mobile app.
So are you proposing that customers use Salesforce One's mobile app?
Adventurers, yes.
Okay. And I have another question around the management of duplicates. So in the existing systems, we have a large number of duplicates and data is entered in an inconsistent manner. Can you tell us how you would, what your strategy would be to deal with the large number of duplicates and to prevent inconsistent data being added from a migration perspective and then going forward?
Yeah, so for the migration, I would make sure that before the data is loaded through the ETL, the data is cleansed as well as deduped sort of outside of the platform in a staging environment. So there are so you can use products. Some of the ETL products itself has the feature to dedupe the data, and we bring only the dedupe data to the platform. And to avoid duplicates in the future, we'll make sure that we keep the unique keys, how to identify unique record, and governance. We have to make sure that we accept the criteria between all the regions to how to identify a duplicate. We don't allow the system to create duplicates moving forward. So the deduping will be done outside before the data is loaded, and going forward, we make sure the right keys are identified so we don't.
Okay, and how would you determine what the right keys are?
It has to be a business decision. So I think so once we do the deduping, we can also do analysis and show the business why these are duplicate records between which keys. We can propose based on analysis the keys that we have to enable as unique keys to enable within the system. So I think it has to be a business decision that we have to get the buy-in on the unique keys.
Okay, thank you. How are we doing for time? We done? Okay. Waruna, thank you so much. I appreciate that was a really difficult and quite a tough scenario for all of us, really. But I thought you did pretty well, considering. It's very clear from your descriptions and from the Q&A process that you've got a lot of experience. Oh, he's just left. I was talking to myself. No, I think we've lost him. Okay, well, I'll carry on giving some feedback and then we can play it. Hi, Waruna.
Hi, Gemma.
Hi.
John. Heather, can you hear me?
Okay, so first of all, thank you so much for taking us through that scenario. Appreciate it. Probably was quite tough for you because you had much longer in the Q&A. But I thought you did it was a very valiant attempt. And actually, I would say that I was sat here next to my husband and we were punching our fists in the air and so happy. What was it? The Apex sharing one? Was it that? And also, I really absolutely loved the way that you presented all of your requirements. I love how you copied and pasted the scenario into the table and split it into sections and then just wrote down what you were going to do next to each section. That's something I want to take into my own review board if I can. So thank you for sharing that. I thought that was excellent. I really liked your, I really liked that. I felt that you've got a lot of experience in continuous integration and development lifecycle. It's clear that you've spent a number of years working in a Scrum team. So that came across really well. And your governance strategies were pretty good. You talked a lot about design standards and a centre of excellence. I couldn't have agreed with you more. It was a really excellent approach. I felt there were a couple of situations where we felt, certainly I felt that you could benefit from having a bit more practice on the declarative side. So building a few apps without writing any code. There was one or two situations where I think you selected in your solution you wanted to write some custom code for the scoring. So there's an early requirement about creating a registration score and then taking assessment as to whether you send a specialist out to review the property. I had that down as a formula field, so it's a registration score calculated based on factors. Your solution was to put code in. You could certainly do that, but you could probably do it a bit quicker with a formula field. So I felt that you could benefit from a bit more declarative work in that regard. I really liked your testing strategy. I did feel there were a few things missing from your data model, and also your selection of opportunities as well was probably suboptimal at this stage because of the cost involved on the licenses. So you wouldn't be able to use opportunities as a community or community plus user, but you would as a partner user. However, it's difficult to justify the level of cost when you could actually reduce the cost by having the registration of a custom object. So that was my feedback. I did feel it was a waterfall project, certainly because of the restrictions around releases. But I was quite happy to hold my hands up and say, do you know what? He's right. When you were talking about using Agile to its advantage and saying we can actually have our 2 weekly sprints, 3 weekly sprints, and just keep continually reviewing and having that process of going through the solutions in the early view with the product managers before you have your quarterly release drop. So I couldn't argue with that at all. I felt that was you justified that in a really excellent way. So thank you. That's it from me on the feedback side. So I'll hand over to Sal. Sal, do you want to give your feedback?
Sure. I think overall it was a nice presentation. I think you could clearly articulate what you wanted to say. Agree with Gemma, the way you presented the requirements and the solutions side by side. Yeah, I always wanted to do that, but it's good to see that in live. That definitely helps to place your solution and also give you a good view of what you're trying to say. So that definitely is a good one for me. On the other hand, I agree with Gemma around the data model. Some key requirements around, I think specifically knowing it's a service related stories around the, I think the service guys were trying to help the adventurers, case management and few use cases around escalation. So that I think was missing in the data model and the overall solution. That and the opportunity and lead, I was not sure about that. But I think, those are the two key pointers from my side. But overall, it was a good, considering it's pretty heavy or a lengthy scenario. I think you did a good job. Thank you.
Yeah, really, really promising. I think you're definitely on the right lines.
Thank you. Heather?
Yeah, agree with both Gemma and Tushar about the requirements. Presenting like that was a good idea, and I also, as well as Gemma, I wouldn't have put the data in opportunities or had them do Sales Cloud, because I think that added a lot of complexity to the solution and a lot of cost. It seemed like maybe, out of view identity and access management, there was a missed requirement for Identity Connect, I think. And I think Tushar was also trying in there to get you to talk about needing a connected app. I think that's where that questioning was going. And then also maybe familiarity with, enough to a little bit more familiarity with some of the newer products, like Einstein, where you were saying to use a report that was would have been a good use case for Einstein. And I'd also agree with with Gemma that I also had waterfall down for the methodology, but thought that you justified using Agile well. And then familiarity with App Exchange apps too. Conga Composer works well for generating PDFs, and I think it's good to, if you're suggesting an App Exchange app, to be able to identify a specific one. So just knowing common use cases for them and being able to recommend a specific one.
Yeah, definitely. And same with testing as well. You talked about automated testing. I would say, by all means, the advice I've been given on that is if you want to recommend a very specific tool, then at least be in it. Chances are the people on your review board judging panel, they won't necessarily be familiar with all of them. But if you're at least able to suggest one and then say, I've selected Conga Composer because it has XYZ capabilities, then that would be good enough for the board. I watched you or heard you do something that I've done many times as well. And in the line of questioning, you started to question yourself, which is really easy to do. We all do it. And I would just say, don't be put off by that, and don't be put off by the questioning as well, because like I said, I was looking at solutions and trying to get you to talk about Apex sharing at one point. So there was that requirement about giving tour guides access to tours only 6 months prior. To me, that was a classic Apex sharing requirement, and we were desperately trying to get you to say it. I think I was here with Chris, and we were going, "Come on, you're almost there." But it was generally really good. I really think you are, just keep practicing, because I think you're definitely on the right track. It's clear that you're very experienced, and I really enjoyed your presentation.
I think there are some areas I need to go and study more. So thank you very much for the feedback.
Yeah, good. Just hope it helped. As I say, don't be put off by the feedback. It's there to help us all, and we can always keep going. We can always have, if you wanted to, we could have another session at some point where we could just go through what we would agree as a team the solution would be, going through it. It would take a separate call. But if you wanted to go through that exercise and you thought it was beneficial, then let's catch up offline. And if you're interested, we'll arrange it.
Definitely, that will be helpful, Gemma.
Say that again?
Yeah, that will be definitely helpful. If you can arrange another session, I would more than happy to. I'll be a great help for me.
So that
yeah, personally, I think as a team, it would be really good to do that, because I think like a lot of times the judges have an idea in mind that we're pointing a candidate towards, and it would be really helpful to have a more definitive idea of what a good solution would look like.
Right.
Let's do that then. We'll take it offline and sort something out. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody, and thanks to all our people who've stayed with us and watched this from start to finish. Hope you found it helpful, and I'll get in touch with you guys about a follow-up session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank you, everybody, for giving up your time. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.